Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's session of Unplugged with Ross. My name is Rosalind Miner. Tonight, we are on episode 10 of season 3, and our topic of the day is Leaps of Faith when risk led to reward. Tonight, I'm joined by Chris Otundo, co founder and CEO of the Craft Catalyst. Chris is an executive, board leader, and talent transformation expert with over 15 years spanning talent strategy, organizational design, change management, digital transformation across Africa. And tonight he joins us as we have a discussion about risk and reward. Chris, karibu sana.
Thank you so much. And that was such a beautiful countdown.
Interesting. Thank you, Chris. So, as is the norm,
Yeah.
let's have a couple of interesting statistics. 7% of workers now believe job security depends on continuous evolution rather than long term stability. Meanwhile, 22% of current jobs are expected to be disrupted by 2030, with 39% of today's skills expected to change. So perhaps the bigger career risk today is not change, but assuming the future will reward standing still. And as we all say, change is the only constant. Chris, any initial thoughts on that?
No, I think indeed career risks, and I guess that's what they're calling it, is inevitable just because the world of work has totally changed and gone upside down. In fact, I wrote to someone today and said the world is going upside down with every large company I see sending people home. The risks have become imminent. Even if you do nothing, the risks are likely to find you where you are. So it's truly about being deliberate about your career today and just how do you navigate that risk that to a large extent could actually find you even if you do nothing.
You mentioned something that actually brought. Yesterday, I was reading an article about Meta, and apparently, they advised their employees to work from home on Wednesday. And it's projected that Meta will be releasing or letting go 10% of their workforce this week. And I couldn't help but feel that might be another 6 a.m. in the morning call coming through because that has been, unfortunately, the trend by a lot of organizations. Now, if we were to start off our conversation, what does taking a smart risk actually look like in our rapid changing world?
Yeah. So a smart risks assumes that it's well informed. It's one that has been thought through. Um, and a risk obviously denotes that there could be some risk or some challenge around as a potential loss or gain. And loss comes in the form of the job ending, you losing that immediate salary that you are hoping to enjoy that once you make that move. But for me, a smart career risk really is one that is informed by a decision that's not just about the money, not just about you wanting to change your environment, but really truly looking for the learning upside. Are you going to a space that you will grow? Are you going to a space where you will stretch yourself and offer yourself the opportunity to gain additional experience? That for me is what a smart career risk is about. And so when I think back to all the moves I've made, when I left, say for instance, a cushy job in a multinational where I had a big title, but then I transitioned to Safaricom, which was a local company, still a big company, but there was a risk in the form of there had been significant attrition in that particular role. They'd had four different leaders in that role for 2 years, which means that role had someone there every 6 months. And I took the opportunity in spite of that challenge because I saw the opportunity to be in an environment that I had not been in before, to learn to manage a large team, to learn or expose myself to the opportunity to manage a huge budget, to manage multiple stakeholders. And so I took the risk. Notwithstanding how long it took, but the point is, I did gain significant lessons from that opportunity. The next transition I made that perhaps was significant was when I left a role at MasterCard Foundation. Again, another multinational where I operated across the continent. I operated in Canada, supporting resourcing in that part of the world as well. A relatively stable job. I had no concerns around whether or not I'll be fired tomorrow, and took on a CEO role, a role I'd never done before, a role that my salary was going to be pegged on how well I perform in terms of closing business. But then again, I took the risk, not because it was going to be easy, but because I had mapped out the problem I was looking to quickly resolve for myself, which was a certain exposure I was looking for. And so I understood the risk that it could be short lived, but I was willing when I measured the two, the opportunity to learn versus the opportunity to the risk of losing the job. I decided the opportunity to learn was bigger, and I took the leap. And again, that has had its significant benefits in the form of a great business that I was able to build at the time, and exposures I've gotten, and other opportunities that have emerged as a result of that leap I made. And lastly, my recent leap to to start a business, another massive career risk, but again, very clear as to what it is I was achieving by virtue of the exposures and experiences I'd gained from all these risks. I now felt ready, and so that for me, Ross, is really what career risk that is smart looks like. At least that's my experience.
From what you've shared, I hear an aspect of growth mindset, where you're not just settling for status quo. There's a deep level of self-awareness, because you have to. It's like you're doing a SWOT analysis on yourself, and then you decide where am I going to get the best ROI, and then what you've done now, coming from in-house roles into entrepreneurship. It's like all the experiences you've had a compounding effect that contributes to the next. So in essence, anyone reviewing their risk appetite or how they want to have it, you really need to look at where your mind's at, your degree of self-awareness, and then the beauty of compounding effect from one role to the next.
Absolutely, that exactly summarizes it.
So in this regard, can we say that career security has changed?
No, certainly, career security has changed tremendously, especially because what you and I called a permanent role, permanent and pensionable, is not safe. We talked about it just now, where big brands, and I mean this is out in the public. I saw today Standard Chartered, global big bank, is looking to let go of people. You mentioned Meta. All these are jobs that perhaps 10 years ago one would think would be very stable. One would truly be able to retire there, have a lasting career. And so career security, job security is no longer what it was. It has now changed. What is safe, Ross, is what no one can take away from you. And what no one can take away from you to a large extent is the skills that you have, the relationships that you form. That is what no one can take away from you. The skills you're gaining, the reputation you've built over time, no one can take that away from you. And that for me is security. That even if I've left these formal employment, the fact that I've built these skills, that I have gained this reputation in the industry, that I have these networks, no one can take that away from me. And that I'm secure in. So that for me is what security looks like, Ross.
Now, a lot of us will have a challenge when it comes to security, because you jump from one job to the next, network is your net worth. But a lot of us assume that just because you have someone's number, it's a network, but it's something, it's a relationship that you build over the years. What would you say to someone who, they are trying to maneuver a conversation within them, and they are trying to say, okay, this is who I am, this is what I can do. I do know XYZ, but the relationship or the bond that I have with this person is not robust enough that this person can say, for example, mention my name in a room that I'm not. What would you say, or what advice would you give someone who needs to, you know, make their safety net better and more robust?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, relationships are not just an acquaintance. Relationships are not that I have your number and that you have mine. Intentional relationship building, intentional relationships is what would count, where someone actually knows a lot more about you. They know the quality of your work. They've seen you consistently showing up in a particular way. That is where relationships form, where you have perhaps exchanged value to each other. That for me is a real relationship. And so a lot of people try to leverage the fact that we're connected on LinkedIn or that we're connected through mutual friends as what they could leverage to extract value from me or from them. But that can't work. Typically you need to have invested, and again, this investment sometimes comes in the form of the tenure you have stayed in a company and you've met different people and they've observed you doing work. So sometimes I tell young people that sometimes the person who's your peer could eventually be someone who opens a door for you. So even if the boss is not in the room, do your work diligently. Show up even if the boss is not in the room, because we are always watching. When you show up to an event, um, be curious and ask questions that go beyond the surface. Get to actually know the person and seek opportunities to do more with the person, as opposed to just that superficial layer. And I think from that is where you could then potentially extract. So today, what happens is, just by virtue of consistently showing up in a particular way, I have found people looking for me for different pieces of work. And sometimes it's even people I don't know because they've heard and spoken to someone I know. And that's really what has worked for me. It's really just consistently showing up, people knowing you for a particular brand of work, particular brand of a topic. The consistency in the relationship building is what I think really matters, Ross.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Consistency is key, be it in relationships, be it in the way you show up as an individual, or even in the way you work. It speaks highly, or actually gives someone an idea of who you are without you, even having interacted with them one on one. Now, if we were to look at the traditional career markers, you know, title, tenure, industry loyalty, sometimes you will find people that are too attached to that. But to what extent are we holding on to long term relevance? Because the people, it's all about title, it's all about tenure, it's all about, the industry. Where are we doing ourselves a disservice?
Yeah, I mean, and many people around me, and perhaps even I might have fallen victim to this. So today, the world of work is rewarding skills, and increasingly, some of the skills that we've gained over a period of 20 years, their shelf life is now down to it used to last you for a long time, but now it's down to maybe 2 more years where your skill will be relevant. Yeah. So that a skill that you've gained for all these years is no longer as relevant, and it's happening really quickly. And so what has become outdated is you holding on to a title, especially if that title has no impact, does not translate to solving a problem for a particular person. So, and I tell this to young people and corporates and professionals alike. So you went to Harvard, you went to Oxford, If you walk into a room with a first class honors, but you can't resolve a problem that we're having, you can't respond articulately to an issue that we're looking to for you to address, then we're not concerned with your degree. If you're a professional HOD director and you walk into a room and when we engage, you're not able to articulate things in the level the level we're expecting, you don't have the right networks, you don't have the right skill set level, your title will not matter. And so it's not just about these titles that we hold on to. One really needs to introspect as to what value am I truly adding to the industry, over and above my huge title. And because that title could easily become obsolete or be phased out with one stroke of an email, or one email saying, we no longer need you anymore and you should go home. So if you were holding on to the title as your claim to glory or claim to fame, then that's the end.
You've touched on something that a lot of, say, millennials or Gen X might, take a minute to reconcile, because historically, it was assumed that when you've been with an organization for 3 to 5 years, you are deemed to be stable, a stable worker. And the people that were frowned upon oftentimes were those that, a year and they skip, or a year or two and they skip. However, in the world today, with the ever changing, world of tech, the world of work, skills are being built. You wake up in the morning and what you thought was relevant is all of a sudden irrelevant. And what we find now in the workplace is that you will find someone who is relatively younger in age, but because they have the skill that is required, they are getting that role with that high salary. And for you that has been having, the tenure and this title, the fact that you don't have that, you're wondering, why is this young person having that high salary? And it has been a debate in the workplace for a while now. But adaptability is something that we all need to embrace, be it skills, be it relevance, and it's not just adaptability for now, but for the future. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so look, and I'm probably one of those they might say are notorious for making. That's probably why you selected me for this podcast. I mean, I've served in roles for as little as 1.5 years, sometimes at the top of it, maybe 3.5 years. And I think ultimately, what when if you double click in any of these instances, what you want to say is, did I learn something in the time that I was there? If you run away from a project halfway through, if you don't complete something that you're working on, then that's a premature move. If in the time that you were in the organization you were able to run a project end to end, the reason why today movement is so prevalent, especially among the young people, and they still seem to be relatively okay, is in the world of work we're now talking about agile projects, where they have they have short sprints, and they finish and they retrospect. And so what you find is in 6 months, this person could have actually shipped two products into the industry, and actually even began to see the effect of that project. And so before in the world before, that might have taken 3 years to do. By the time we deliver a project, it's probably 3 years of iteration, and probably no iteration. We just keep pushing on the assignment until the end, and then finally deliver. But today, that has been quickly shrinked, and we can do that so much faster. So a young person could potentially have done so much within 1 year in an organization, and you truly need, as a HR professional, anyone evaluating them, double click to see what is it that they have actually attained in the 1 year that is now making them ready to make the next leap of faith. And so for me, I'm very clear that tenure for the sake of tenure is of no value, especially if after 5 years all you've done is one project and you've probably not learned anything from it, or you've not deployed it as yet. There's been no learnings. It's truly around double clicking and checking. What are you learning in those periods? I stayed in a role as CEO for 2.5 years, and in that time I was able to build the brand from a place of what I basically did is reposition the brand from one that was considered more youth focused, and I then was able to reposition it as a brand that could speak to executives, and we started then offering executive search. Now, by the time I was done, that is something I successfully did. And the time I was a CEO, I was able to bring in significant partnerships with large corporates. That for me was success. And so on my feather, on my cap is two feathers that I've just articulated, which no one can take away from me. Even if I did 2.5 years, I am confident in that exposure that I got. And I think that should be the mindset. What did you achieve in the 6 months? If it was just 6 months of barely starting a project and then running away, then that's a problem.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks one to organizations that have, based their EVP heavy on tenure to rethink how they are treating current workforce and future workforce, because an organization can start with one line or one aim, but as you grow and as you evolve as an organization, things change. The way the design of the organization changes, and you need to be ready for what the future demands. Now, we've spoken about mindset, the need for self-awareness and that compounding effect, and redefining career security. That has definitely changed. Now let us look at fear. Fear is the one thing that, yeah, holds a lot of us back. So how do you know whether fear is protecting you from a bad decision or preventing you from necessary growth? Because I think a lot of people, either you're guessing the capacity that you have or the ability that you have, or you're genuinely afraid about making the move.
Yeah, and it's a genuine concern. The thing about fear is that a lot of times you really need to double click and check once again, is this fear fact based, or is it an imagination? Is it just me imagining things? And a lot of times, unfortunately, if you really look at fear that is genuine, it will have data points. For instance, this organization, I need to leave because it only has 3 months runway. That's the only budget they have. And if I stay on, I'm going to sink with the ship. Um, when I quickly analyze this organization, there is no opportunity for me to grow to the next level because you know what? There's only one person above me. We're an organization of three people. That's fact based. But fear that is growth blocking, fear that will is blocking you, is typically very vague. So I ask you, why have you not? Why are you? Why won't you make the move? Then you question. The response is, what if I fail? And then I ask the question, give me facts about why you think you'll fail. There's rarely ever any evidence. Yeah. And so a lot of people will turn down opportunities because of very vague reasons. And unless there's really tangible evidence backing your fear, then that fear should not be given attention. Yeah, you should truly, in my mind, growth comes from you going to the unknown and the uncharted. And unless there's a tangible reason why your fear is taking center stage, then it is not genuine. It is an imagination. It is you creating an imagination that is taking you away from you leaping into something that could be great.
Now, if I can borrow from your personal experience, or maybe you can take us through from personal experience, you've
Mm,
made switches from multinationals to local brands to again multinational, or a change of a role, or not just a role, but the responsibilities have just grown in a very when it comes to the span, it's really grown. How did you navigate, aspects of fear or imposter syndrome in this effect? Because the reality is everyone is comfortable with the known, the devil but then growth only comes through uncharted waters. And without giving yourself that opportunity, it's very hard for you to realize your full potential. So how did you navigate that transition for yourself?
Yeah, yeah. I think earlier on, um, there is a world where you do need to build your craft to an extent. The other thing is that, and in building your craft, then it does build a sense of confidence. For starters, that's just important. But the question is, will you always be the smartest in the room? Will you always be the prepared for an opportunity? No. And so for me, I think at the beginning, when I was able to navigate the first challenge that I encountered at the workplace, where I took on a role that I had never done before, and I successfully learned through it and overcame the initial fear. I leveraged on that going forward. So I think when I was leaving consulting, so in consulting world, all we did was build amazing frameworks, designed beautiful PowerPoints that would guide an organization on how they should proceed. But I had never been in-house. And so here an opportunity to be in-house. And so this was my opportunity to join General Electric. And I was now going to be in charge of talent acquisition for East Africa. And I'd never done an in-house role before. But I had to my point earlier, I had a craft around talent acquisition. I had been a broader HR professional, but here now I was being asked to kind of specialize and work within an organization where there are systems that are geared towards this specific functionality. And I spent time learning, and I spent time talking to colleagues and really researching. I think in being humble enough to ask, in being humble enough to learn, and not appear to be the know-it-all, that initial posture will allow you to get through that initial inertia. But then after that, after going through that and actually succeeding, I have now drawn back to that same kind of kind of feeling that new environments will always be different. New environments will always present an opportunity to learn, and so I go into those opportunities knowing I'm scared simply because I don't know, and it's okay not to know. And if I just spend the next 3 to 4 months talking and learning and not trying to immediately come up with solutions, because that's the big problem. Whenever you take a role, the assumption is that as soon as I take this role, I need to immediately disrupt. In fact, any books you read around taking on leadership roles or taking on a new role, they tell you the first 100 days, spend time learning. Be humble enough to pause and find out the context. And in doing that, there is no pressure to deliver because you quickly understand what works, what does not work. You pulse for yourself some of the assumptions you had, and therefore you slowly seam and ease into the role. That way, then the fear is less noisy because I know I have reduced the pressure on myself to quickly resolve any problems that I have newly encountered. But more importantly, like I said, your craft, in knowing your craft, in consistently trying to learn, even in new environments, you find that your fears quickly dissipates. The other thing is, I think seeking alliances, seeking mentors who can speak to you about your new environment. I found myself when I took on my CEO role, I called a couple of CEOs. When I took on the role as when I was taking on an entrepreneurship role, I spoke to entrepreneurs, just trying to understand what the fears they had at the beginning and how to navigate those. So again, removing yourself from this echo chamber. If you're just talking to yourself, then you allow the fear to consume you. When you speak to other people, you realize, wow, this person is just like me, and they navigated it. So that for me is another practical way of navigating fearful situations, because it's truly something that you can overcome with support.
I like the fact that you have touched not only, the practical side of things, but also showing how fear can contribute to procrastination. And procrastination in this sense should not be confused for patience, because, you think you will be ready. You will never be ready, be it an in house role, be it entrepreneurship, or even aspects to do with life. No one, even when it comes to, for example, parenting, It doesn't come with a handbook. You learn the ropes as you go, and you learn from others. As long as you're a lifelong student, you will always have room to improve. Now, let us now shift over to, AI and the future of work. Now, with AI changing how work gets done, what kind of career moves should professionals be thinking about now? And maybe now and the future.
Yeah. So I think for the audience today, one just needs to appreciate that it's going to disrupt every role. Every single role is going to be disrupted. And so what I'm observing is that people who are figuring out roles that require you to make judgment, not just to deliver, not just to deliver summaries or drafts, to do analysis. A lot of this is being done by AI. And what AI has done is it has made all of us capable of delivering very quick, very good work. All right. So delivering work is no longer the problem. The problem is in making the judgment. All right. So if you can be in a role that allows you to leverage this very well crafted analysis and support the organization then to make insights and to make judgments, that's a role that will flourish in the future. A role that requires you to build trust, a role that requires you to hold people accountable, a role that requires you to be emotionally intelligent. So further up in the decision making um, kind of ladder is where you will gain a lot more success. But if you're further down in the journey where it's around execution, around analysis, around drafting, coding, even today, now those roles are unfortunately going to be disrupted. So it's more around judgment, around managing people, bringing people together, forming alliances, navigating change together. Those are the roles that will sustain. Those are the careers that people should be looking at now. And so, how do you leverage a role that uses technology and AI, but still has a human component to it? Now, that's a role that's going to sustain.
So, to simplify that, is that automation is here and it's here to stay. A lot of roles will be absorbed through automation. However, as a result of that automation, there will be outputs that will come through that will need that human touch when it comes to judgment, when it comes to, you know, building that trust, change management, etc. That is where we need to be seeking or looking up or out for, so that yes, there are roles that will become obsolete. However, the fact remains that we still need that human touch, regardless of how automated an organization can be. So, in that respect, if we were to look at career pivots, obviously a lot of roles are going, very tech enabled, very automated. But if we look at, let's take HR as a profession. There are roles that are getting automated with every passing day: talent acquisition, learning and development. But when it comes to identifying the skills of the future or the skills that the organization needs, you still need that human touch, and also analyzing the reports that are coming through from the systems that you're having. If you were to narrow down on a HR perspective, and we put implemented AI or all the automation there is, what do future HR jobs look like, viewing the impact of AI and tech?
Yeah. So I think HR is a space that's exciting, because increasingly you will then move away from the mundane report writing, the mundane analysis of files, and I think that what traditionally has been considered a HR role, to a place where with technology, you're then empowered to make some very informed decisions. So, for instance, in the space of learning, someone might be concerned about, are these learning journeys actually adding value to the organization? And so you can then be called an AI learning journey expert or a learning experience designer. So you're thinking about, because now you understand what the different pathways are. You can see with the data, it's mapped out the different learning paths, and so then you're then designing those journeys alongside AI. You could become a person who's concerned with, so now that we know AI is disrupting the workplace, could you be coming in to be the person who architects the new the new role of talent development? And so there will be a need for someone who understands talent development in the AI world. So again, it's the human element of the job still remains. It's just how do we navigate that in an AI world? um, all organizations are going to have to embrace AI, and so go through transformations. And a HR person who's been through change management before, their title now becomes an AI transformation leader. So you're helping the organizations adopt AI tools. You're working with them. You become the person who becomes the strategist who's supporting them navigate AI. Again, my friends who are experts in organization design, this is now an expert in structures of the future. So the title could be an AI, I mean, technology structure manager. So it's the roles will remain. The form and what they do within those roles is what's going to change. Yeah, and so because the form and the form changes, then maybe people will be tempted to change the title. So that if you're now a recruiter, before you used to be called the person who's your talent acquisition person, but now that acquisition is being done for you. So now, what new role might you be having? Maybe your role is the orchestrator of the AI chatbots that are sieving people. So maybe you're called an AI agent manager, or the talent acquisition AI agent manager. I mean, it'll be the titles will change to follow the new kind of work. So the future talent acquisition manager, like I said, will have 10 AI agents, one concerned with employer branding, the other one concerned with shortlisting, the other one concerned with onboarding, the other one concerned with assessments. So if my role is just orchestrating the AI agents, so I'm no longer called a talent acquisition manager, I'm called something else. So it's really around, because I'm still going to be required to then take that information, all the sifting that has been done on my behalf, communicate it to the board, tell them these are the roles that we are looking to recruit, and this is the reason why this has come through like this. This is the data that's emerging. So you're still very valuable in communicating the effectiveness of the process, and so there's still a lot of work, at least for the next 5 to 10 years, for people who will embrace AI and learn how to use it.
I think one of the things we also might forget is that AI agents are learning from us with our current scope of knowledge and our iteration of what the now and the future looks like. So, what we have in terms of skills and expertise is very relevant in terms of teaching AI agents to deliver the outputs that we want to see. So, I think the idea here, or the intention should be, okay, this is where we're going. What would I like for AI to deliver for me to enable the organization grow in XYZ manner? Now, if you are not to take a practical assessment before making a major career move, what should someone realistically assess beyond salary and title? You touched on it earlier, but now if you were to decide, okay, Rosalind, you want to make a move, what should I have in mind, bear in mind, and they are non-negotiables?
Yeah, I think ultimately, a lot of times we make these decisions based on money, and like I said earlier, You make a decision based on money, you go into that job and you find quickly it's not what you're expecting. And a lot of times I've seen people walk away from the money to go and sit at home. You and I have experienced that. So money should really be one of the last things you think about. What you really want to understand when you're taking on a new role is how much am I going to learn? And I said that before. Will I grow quickly in this role if I take on this role? Will I be given the opportunity as a number two point? How close am I to decision making? How you see, sometimes you are three levels away from the big boss. This job is now two layers away. So I'm now closer to strategy. I'm now closer to judgment. Remember, we talked about going to roles that require more judgment.
Yeah.
If you're sitting at a role where you're just doing the mundane analysis, mundane um, analysis and documentation, a lot of that stuff is going to be automated. So you want to go further up in the journey around decision making, around orchestration. And so I would be asking myself, am I in a role that's getting closer to where influence actually sits? Number three is the question around brand. A lot of times we there's a story that's told when you move a job. People will say, what informed their decision to go to that brand? Sometimes the brand waters you down, but ultimately you're the one who understands why you've taken on that brand. If it's because you know in taking on that brand, while it might not be a big brand, you will be learning because now you're at the decision level, you're the person in charge of a bigger budget. Then don't be concerned about what other people think. It's really your experience that counts. But there are also brands that really end up tarnishing your reputation. The company is known for bad culture, the company is known for bad work ethos. And so in taking on that job, people will, and then you stay there for 2 years, people will assume that that brand represents you. And so you end up watering down what you've built over the years. So I think ultimately, will I learn? How close am I to decision making? And the brand are things I would think about in making a decision around my career. And then again, lastly, I guess is, should this not work, what will I have gained? Yeah. So even if I stay there for 6 months, is there something I could have gained? There are people who decide, look, I'm going to be paid um, $30,000 a month. Even if I sit there for 6 months, I could have built a house in those 6 months. So you make a decision that even if I left in 6 months, and it's fine. But ultimately, the choice is really going to be very personal. But don't chase a salary, don't chase a title. I've seen that fail so many times in my career.
I think that is something that a lot of us need to bear in mind and reconcile, that it's not always about the money. There are people that have taken job cuts because a new role is giving them more satisfaction than that big salary they were being offered, either in their current role or in another role. So look for your purpose, look where the satisfaction is, the growth is. You have to learn. If all you're walking away with after a stint with an organization is just zeros in your account, then you're no better than if you had never joined them in the first place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What personal realities should inform risk taking? So, there are those that would be finances, family obligation, timing, life stage, professional brand, and emotional bandwidth. You have alluded to it in the previous point, but if you can take us deeper on that.
Yeah. So what personal realities? I think all of them are important because they count depending on where you are in your life. Some people will choose not to take a job because it's going to take them away from family. The timing is off because I'm looking after my family, my parents. We just got a new baby, and so I'm not going to make that move now. Like I talked to you about the professional brand. So if you decide to take on a brand that will water your experience or water your reputation, um, when you talk about financial when you take a personal reality. So, for instance, in taking on entrepreneurship, you really want to think about the fact that do you have enough runway for you to be able to survive even if the business doesn't take off immediately? Because you know, you and I know, if you're under financial duress, you will not be thinking strategically. The pressure will eventually corrupt good judgment. And so you really want to make a decision around careers, around risk taking, evaluating your personal circumstance. If you're going into entrepreneurship, then you need to look at your finances, your family situation. If you're taking a job, I mean, I'm a proponent of families staying together. And so sometimes people then take on a job that's far away, and that's a personal decision. There's just going to always be an opportunity cost as you take on those opportunities. Some people decide to take on a job that is going to, again, very interesting. Depending on your value system, you take on a job where you're selling a product that you would not tell your grandmother or mother about, but because you are hell bent on making the money, you do it. And then what you find is it eats at your values, it eats at your insides. So again, everybody really needs to evaluate the risk that they're going to take based on your personal circumstances. Some roles will require you to work very late hours. Some roles will require you to really stretch your physical yourself, and it'll take on you physiologically. And so the question is, do you want to? Are you at the stage where you want to take on your body? Are you young enough to handle that pressure? Not all of us can, and so you say, no, no, no. Look, I need my 8 hours of sleep, and I'm not going to take on a job that only lets me sleep for 5 hours. So you really need to evaluate: is this job going to take me further away from my family? Is this job going to take me not allow me to spend this season of time with my child? All of those need to be, because ultimately they end up coming to bite, especially if you didn't really spend time really evaluating it. So ultimately, I mean, look at the lessons that you're going to learn, the learning opportunities, but also think about these personal factors that you've raised that are so important. And I've had to also think about them as one of the opportunities I walked away from, a very senior role. I walked away because it was a risky role. It's a role that my life could actually have been in danger. And I have a young family, and I said, no, no, no. I don't want the risk of being front and center and being very public, because then this role could. So I walked away from a great opportunity just because my family could have been impacted. Yeah,
That speaks of, evaluating yourself 360, not just yourself as an individual, but the people that, relying on you. It could be family, nuclear extended,
absolutely.
and personal values.
Correct.
I remember a while back, a coach once told me that if, for example, you are in a role that you're unhappy in, the best time to do, to rethink your next steps or even to do your resignation letter is not when you are annoyed. You should actually, design your resignation letter or consider making a move when you are at your peak. You're really happy and you do not have negative, influences when it comes to the decision that you're making, because sometimes it becomes very emotive. And at the time, I was looking at her like, why should I do a resignation letter when I'm happy? I'm happy. And she told me, yeah, when you're happy, that's when you're most sober. But when you're angry with your line manager and the company and the values and the direction they're taking, you actually might make a move that will come and bite you.
It's a good point. Obviously, easier said than done, Ross. You and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I'm taking away from that, and I agree with, is that when you're angry, because I used to get calls from my friends, and they say, Chris, is there an opportunity? And my first question used to be, what happened at work? Because I know you're making this decision because you're upset. You're looking for a job because you're upset. And so, kind of the ethos is, are you thinking, when you're thinking about the next opportunity, is it deliberate? Is it based on What am I going to learn? Is it based on, is it going to stretch me? Am I going to be to gain more? So if that situation is not allowing you to think straight, then yes, it's the wrong time to resign. If you, when you're happy is when you're thinking straight and you're being able to be rational about the family situation, all these things that we talked about. If that allows you to process all of that properly, then that's the right time to resign. If when you're angry you're still being able to process, by all means resign. But a lot of times you and I know when you're angry, a lot of that logic comes out of the window. But it's not, it's really easier said than done. Sometimes the anger gives you the boldness to make that decision.
True. There, I bet there are instances when someone has, you have an opportunity lined up and you're wondering, is it really nice? And then someone takes you off and you're like, you know what? That's it. I even have a job. I'm out. That,
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
all you needed. As we
Exactly.
come to, the tail end of this discussion, what is one professional assumption many people may need to unlearn to remain relevant and fulfilled?
Yeah, I think there's probably two. One is that everyone thinks that AI is not going to disrupt their role. It's not coming, not in Africa, not now. That's a sad reality that people are still thinking it's not relevant, that it's not them. It's happening so quickly. I mean, 2 years ago, ChatGPT was just a thing that a few people talked about and were using to do to ask for relationship advice. Now it's coding, it's doing everything that developers were doing. And we had a big software company in Kenya that was hiring thousands of software developers, and now a lot of that coding is being done by software, by the software is making the software without human, you know.
Yeah.
And so for me that's the number one assumption, that change is going to come so quickly. So please pay attention, pay attention to your role and how you are fitting into this new world. I think the number two is that in being loyal to a company, in staying put, that will increase your marketability. What you want to be loyal to is your craft, your values, the people, the networks. That one nobody can take away from you. Being loyal to, are you learning? Are you growing? Being loyal to, am I building my network? Being loyal and staying true to your values and what traits stay true to you. Those ones is, that's the real security. These other things, the jobs, unfortunately, they'll spit you out as soon as it doesn't make commercial sense. Yeah.
I think you have mentioned or stated something that a lot of Gen X and millennials we need to reconcile with, because we, as long as the job works for you, as long as the job pays the bills, I'm okay.
Mm-mm.
But unfortunately, when restructures are being done and when workforce planning for the future is being done, they will be looking not really about your performance. It will be, do your skills match what the organization needs in the future?
That's
And
it.
if the answer is no, you can rest assured that you will face the cut. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm not
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that long-term loyalty is bad. I mean, I have ever worked for a company for 16 years and I have my reasons behind that and the growth that comes with it. But at the same time, do not be the reason why you face the cut
Mm.
because you are either too comfortable and you did not become agile enough or adapt to what the future
Yeah.
demands.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, Ross. I think once again, the time the 16-year period was rewarding was because you were honing your craft, which would serve you for a longer time. Now that craft is being disrupted every 2 years. So it's no longer a respecter of the 16 years. It's like, what crafts are you building quickly? Number two, there are people who stay in an organization for long but do different things. So you're constantly learning and doing different roles. Now that's a great 10-year story. companies like Procter and Gamble, EABL allowed people to move from role to role, and people stayed there for long periods of time. Now, that person coming out of the EABL or Procter and Gamble is so broad, and that's a great story. But I've also seen the reverse, which is somebody stays in a role for 7, 8 years, one role, has never grown, has done the same projects over and over again. Now that's a bad story around tenure, and so that's the difference really that one needs to evaluate when you think about tenure.
Now, what you've just said actually now builds into our next question. What signals might indicate that someone is being called toward unnecessary move?
Mm, 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 mm.
Because we cannot afford to be complacent.
No, and I think that the evaluation needs to be something that you do yourself. I spoke to a CEO a year ago, and she said she does a role for every, she counts roles. She does it 1,000 days, and 1,000 days is pretty much about 2 years, 2.5 years. And so she says she does it for 1,000 days because in those 1,000 days she's able to quickly learn, offer some insight, disrupt, build something. If after the 1,000 days she's not building, she's not disrupting, that now she feels as though she's not adding any value, then it's time for her to leap. However, if after those 2.5 years a new project comes up, so the role has reinvented itself, the role has given her a chance to create something new, then that role can still sustain. So she might stay on. But if when she does an assessment, there's no more learning happening, she's not creating any new value, she's doing the same thing she did at day 250, then it's time to leave. So this is again the self-reflection that everyone needs to do. That after 1,000 days, am I learning? Am I adding value? Am I creating value? That is the signal. If it's not, if you're not feeling alive, if you're feeling restless, that everything is just the same, you're not energized to continue doing the work, then it's time to leave. I've felt excited about every new project I've done, and every time I jump and do a new thing, because I have a penchant for new projects and new things. And so the minute I do it and I'm done, I will move. And it could happen in entrepreneurship as well, Ross. I cannot promise you in the next 3 years I might be doing what I'm doing. But the thing is, my reflection will be: have I learned? Have I added value? And is it something that's sustainable? Because it's also something to just start something and let it fail. Is it sustainable? Will it continue to showcase and be seen years before I leave? Now that for me is a real value creation.
If I take the example of the CEO with the 1,000 days and I come to a lower cadre within an organization, maybe someone is just starting out on their career. I think here it's where we need to say, what does the growth path look for you within either that organization? Is there opportunity for growth? And how strict are you with how fast you want to grow? Because growth has to be intentional. If you're not hungry enough, then you cannot move from one level to the next. So even if you're on the lower level, you might not have the luxury for 1,000 days. That's a CEO with a very huge mandate. So every day will be something new. But for someone who's on a lower cadre, you need to look at, this is where I'm at. What does the next step look like, either vertically or horizontally? And how fast or how soon do I want to master and jump on to the next?
Yeah, and I think,
Because
yeah, no, you're right. Because please carry on.
I think because if we stay too comfortable, say 6 months within an organization, at least it'll give you an idea what the organization is about. But when you hit the 1 year mark, 1.5 year mark, you are very much within the system of that organization. If you're not growing within that role, maybe it has expanded, the mandate has expanded, or you're moving upward or horizontally, then you need to relook what the future looks like for you within that organization or within the profession or line that you have, taken, the trajectory you want to go.
Agreed. And a lot of those things you've mentioned require a level of agency, because you see a lot of people's careers happen to them. And I propose that your career can truly be in your hands, where you are deliberately mapping it out on a daily basis. And I remember, and I say this because I did it deliberately. When I was starting out in my career, I decided to leave employment. And so these risks started long ago, Ross. I left employment to go to France for 1.5 years. And I had a good job at Deloitte. And I said, let me take this risk, use my savings to go and study. And I was doing it very deliberately because I knew that in going to France, I was going to pick up on a new language, which was going to make me stand out from my peers. Number two, I knew that by leaving for my master's to go to France, I had the inevitable likelihood of also impressing employers because I had an international experience. And so that then became my reasoning and my why. And so even if I struggled through being a student in my early 30s, when I was supposed to be enjoying my career, I decided to do it anyway because I'm like, let me struggle through this because I know that on the other side of this, it's going to be rewarding. So you kind of have to be very deliberate. And so that time I went to the embassy, I knew no one there, and I said, hey, I want to apply. And they took my application and took it for and put it in the diplomatic bag. So the university was receiving my application through the French embassy in Nairobi, without a parent, without a big name behind me. But it's just being deliberate and saying, this is what I'd like. I'm here in this organization for a period. You articulate it and say, in the time I'm here, these are the things I want to learn. I want to have met these five people because I think in meeting them and in engaging with them, I will learn these five things. I want to have worked in this function because if I've done a project end to end, these are the lessons I will have learned. This is the skill I will have gained, as opposed to this is the money I will have earned. Yeah, I think that for me is what has guided my leaps of faith and my risk taking and decisions around whether to leave or not.
I think maybe a lot of us may be risk averse, but nothing good has ever come when you sit pretty.
I mean, they talk about. I mean, it might sound so cliche, but if it's they say what if it's not big enough, or if it's what do they say about if it's I'm trying to find the word, but if it's not big enough, if it doesn't scare you,
Yeah, yeah,
if it doesn't scare you, then
true.
it's not the right one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
So you truly do need to take on these very scary things and very things that you're not sure about. Just take them on. Do them scared is what they say. I think I forget her name.
Even Richard Branson says it. If you're
Uh,
offered the role, take the role, learn
yeah,
it, and grow with
there's a
it.
lady called Brennan or Brown. I forget her name, but she talks about you just doing it scared and walking into the arena. You're at least the one who's tried. Others are just watching. In trying and in getting beaten while you're still trying and learning, you're the one in the arena. You're learning, and you're the one who's taking the risk. Yeah, and on the other side of risk comes a lot of reward. Yeah,
True. Very true. Be clear on your why, be deliberate, and do it
absolutely,
scared. To
absolutely.
the to the final question of the night. If someone is currently sitting on a decision they've delayed for months, what should they interrogate first?
Yeah, yeah. So I think what you want to interrogate is there a real data point behind why you are refusing or choosing the thing that you're choosing to do? I think I go back to the conversation around fear being a lot of times based on imagination. If there's no real data behind it, oh, I'm scared, I'm not ready, which unfortunately tends to happen to the female species, the female side of the workplace. It's almost like I'm not ready, and men tend to apply for a job that they're 60% qualified for, and the
Yeah,
ma- and the women only apply when they're 110% qualified for a role. Yeah. And so, in doing and in going forward for the job that you're only 60% qualified for, you have the chance to learn, and eventually you fit into the role and then become really qualified. But in waiting for a role for you to be 100% qualified or 100% ready, it never comes. There's just never a time when everything will line up perfectly. And don't wait for someone to come and knock on the door for the opportunity. It is you to go and look for it. So I truly am believer, Ross, of creating. So people come to me and say, I'm looking for a job. And my response is typically, who do you want to work for? And people look at me and say, what do you mean? I say, no, name for me the 5 companies you want to work for. And then I'd ask the next question, have you ever spoken to anyone in that organization? No. So how are you ever going to work in that organization? You know nothing about them. You don't even know when they're what's driving their business. So that role is just never going to show up. And so it's really around you being deliberate, you being and really are interrogating. When I'm fearful of this opportunity, is it because there's a real tangible reason, or is the fear imagined? I think that for me is the biggest leap of the biggest assessment one needs to do. And then what's the cost? What's the cost of me not doing this? 5 years down the line, when I look back, will I be saying, what if? What if I had tried? What if I had tried? I think that's a big that for me is something I wish I never have to say.
You say something that a lot of hospice nurses experience when they are, taking care of the parents who are at end of life. A lot of people will normally say, I wish I had. I wish I had loved. I wish I had laughed. I wish I had traveled. Very many I wish. And there's also there's a story or something that goes along the lines of you're 36 and you're afraid to go do your degree program because you think you're too old. The fact remains 4 years from now you will be 40, and the difference will be you're either 40 with your degree program or you're 40 still
Correct.
going, I'm still too old. So
Correct. Correct.
you decide. So yes, fear can actually make you miss a lot of opportunities. And I'm
Absolutely.
not saying that fear is not valid. There are aspects that, yes, you should be afraid.
Especially when there's data to back it.
Exactly.
Mm.
But if you are the one who is gaslighting yourself and not believing in yourself, having early stage imposter syndrome, then you're not doing yourself any favors. And I think, you know, what the topic of today, and the topic is leaps of faith when risk led to reward. The topic of today is about analyzing where you're at, what you need to be aware of, what you need to do, and don't just sit, you know, like a duck and wait for things to happen. You have to have that foresight of what changes are coming. Are you ready? And when those opportunities come, don't be the one stopping yourself to flourish. I think
Absolutely.
that would be my final thought or say when it comes to tonight's topic. What about you,
Absolutely.
Chris?
No, I think I'll end where I started. That risks of this fear we have of losing a job or of making the wrong move. Unfortunately, even in just sitting down, stuff will happen to you. So how about you then become more deliberate about what happens to you?
Yeah.
Because you decide not to upskill, you decide not to make a leap of faith, you could be disrupted out of a job. You decide to sit at home and do nothing, you'll run broke. So either way, something is going to happen. But I think if you're more deliberate about and are prudent about the decisions you make, then you chances are likely that you the outcomes will be better. I think lastly is really surround yourself around positive energy, around people who can speak life into you, because it's very easy to suck yourself into a space of despair, to suck yourself into a space of I'm not good enough. There's definitely some value you have and someone is just waiting to see it. And so I think it's just more around getting out there and taking that leap of faith.
I couldn't agree more. And for me, I am walking away, when it comes to fear. I've, I've actually been held back by fear previously because you think you're not ready enough and you're waiting for the right time, but the right time never comes. So jump, jump in. As long as you have the data points, jump in, go for it. You have nothing to lose, but a lot to gain.
Absolutely.
Chris, I cannot thank you enough for joining us tonight to
Thank
tackle
you.
this topic. You have challenged us to think beyond the limits that we expose, sorry, or we build around ourselves. You have taken us through your journey of how you have analyzed from one role to the next and actually also analyze what opportunities lie ahead when you take moves that might be deemed, what were you thinking when you made the move? But in retrospect, those moves have actually led to the success that you see today and the brand that you are today. And for that, we can actually see and how can we emulate that and apply it to our personal journeys, because you just can't do a copy paste. You have to be strategic about it. For those that joined us through LinkedIn and YouTube, thank you very much for your patronage. Feel free to engage with us through our LinkedIn profiles or the individual brands that are there. And if I may kindly make a quick note, Chris, would you mind giving us a quick snippet about the wonderful work you do at the Craft Catalyst? Because I bet there are parents that are listening today that
Yeah.
might have, young children that need to go, for further education. Please give us a brief about what you're doing at the Craft Catalyst.
Yeah. The Craft Catalyst is concerned about catalyzing talent for the future of work. And we are doing two things. One is that we are offering high school students an opportunity to explore study abroad at a fraction of the price for locations like US, UK, Canada, Australia, which tend to be quite high and at the same quality. So this is one of the things that we're doing through one of our brands called Craft Ed. Our second brand is called Craft X, which is concerned with offering university students access to virtual work experience at scale. So we simulate real work from real companies that ensures young people have tangible and real hands-on experience when it comes to work and to reduce the delta between what they learned and what is really happening at the world of work. So through our platform, we've partnered with a number of corporates helping young people gain work experience. So through these two brands, Craft X and Craft Ed, you have the Craft Catalyst, and we're having a lot of fun.
Yes, I can attest to the fun that they're having and the fact that Chris also runs a podcast, Craft Ed Podcast. So
Absolutely.
please feel free to go to their YouTube channel,
Thank you.
watch the wonderful work that they're doing there, and spread the word,
Thank you.
because the future of work is you and I, the future, the generations that you're raising. Feel free to engage Chris and his team. And from me, I will continue spreading the word not only as Unplugged with Ross, but also within my network. I thank you for joining
Thank
us tonight, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Unplugged with Ross. Until then, see you and have yourselves a good evening. Thanks and goodbye.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you for having me.